I'm excited as always for you to be here for another episode. So please like, please share, and please subscribe as we continue to grow the brand and grow the program. And I'm so excited to have a great man on. And let me tell you something about Doc. Busy guy. I'm gonna let him get into it a lot more into the podcast. But I had some challenges earlier. I had my notifications off and I was communicating with him, and I missed the first interview. And with a guy of his stature that's busy, that can really hurt him. But we had a good conversation, and you're going to see the kind of man that he is. He gave us another opportunity to get it right. And I told him he didn't have to, but I told him that we want to get it right. So I'm appreciative of him. And just for a guy of his stature to be able to give me an opportunity, put his stamp on this interview, is going good for a guy who just getting started in this podcast space. So I'm appreciative of you, Doc. And I'm excited to hear your story and so many things that you have. So Dr. Baghurst, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And for those that don't know, we're going through some storms this evening. So you were amenable in moving up our time to make sure that we got through this before power may go out. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, Doc, I had to. So, Doc, let's kind of jump into it because, again, you have an amazing story. Just doing some of my research and just studying some of the things you've been doing. Of course, I've been reading my book. Of course, we're going to talk more about that as well. But, Doc, I want you to tell us about your journey. I want you to talk about your childhood and just talk about how you got to where you are right now, because just doing some of my research, it's amazing. And just listening to some of the things, well, I say listening, but reading some of the things that you have implemented here and some of your other writings tells me that you have an interesting story, and I'm willing to hear it, and I want everybody else to hear it. So, Doc, and I say it all the time, excuse me, I say take us down memory lane, but just take us through that journey to where you are as Dr. Baghurst today.
Yeah, I'm going to try to keep it brief because I know that when people are guests on my show, if they talk for 10, 15 minutes about their personal friends when they were 6, most people generally don't care that much. I'm originally from England. I spent about 9 years in West Africa growing up. My parents were missionaries, so I saw the world a little differently to most people. The interesting thing about that, for a large portion of that, I was the minority in the country. I was the person that didn't fit in, that was excluded, etc., because of where I came from and who my family were, my heritage, etc. So it was interesting growing up in that kind of environment. I went back to England for high school, went to the South Coast, Chichester, for my undergrad in sports science. From there, as with many students, when we graduate, what do we do with ourselves now? I really didn't have, I was a first generation college graduate, college student, period. So I didn't have any guidance in that respect. And so what do? Well, I'll go to grad school. So I went to Wales. I went to grad school at the University of Bangor, did a master's in sports psych, did my essentially my master's in teaching as well, became certified to teach, started teaching at a kind of a community college in England before deciding with my wife that who was American that maybe life would be different in the US. I won't go into all of the challenges of living in England, but there are many. And so we moved to the US. I couldn't work in the US because I didn't yet have my green card. So I moved to the US as a student again, went to a university in Texas and did another master's because, why not do more master's degrees? That sounds like fun. Got my master's there and went to Arkansas, did my doctorate in physical education. From there, I stayed at Arkansas and taught before moving to a smaller school in Arkansas for 3 years, 7 years at Oklahoma State, and just finishing up my 5th year at Florida State. So a lot of academics. Most people would assume we live in ivory towers and we look down on the world below us and we tell everybody how it should be and the right things to do it. That's not me at all. In fact, the reason I look very disheveled and a little bit discombobulated is because I just got off coaching this afternoon. I really believe that those of us who work in academics have to have a foot in the real world to really understand what's going on, to really relate to students and the coaches that we work with, so that there's buy-in, and we're not just making things up. We're not just telling them how it is and we don't understand. There has to be relatability, and that's something important to me and the faculty in our program. So we all have extensive coaching experience because we want to know what it's like. We want to be able to understand our students. So very briefly, that's kind of my academic journey. Along the way, I've competed at a variety of sports over the years. I think most successfully in racquetball. I was fortunate to compete at a pretty high level there, and was able to coach the U.S. junior national team as well, as head coach for a little while, and recently stepped down from that in December of last year. So there you have it. Published a lot of papers, as academics are kind of expected to do. I've written a few books, which every now and again somebody accidentally finds on Amazon, and there you have it.
Coach, I love it. I did want to ask you, talk about some of the sports or some of your coaching, I guess your coaching career. I know you're still actively doing it, but talk about a little bit just in detail, because I love what you said, and I'm a big believer of this component. It's hard to teach someone when you necessarily hasn't when you haven't been in that position before, or you haven't experienced it. So I love how you and your team, you established, let me put my, as I say, boots on the ground to experience that, because I think students, athletes, and other people, you are more relatable like that. And you probably heard this before. I know Shaquille O'Neal, he always said when he played in the NBA, he wanted a coach who had coached in the NBA finals, who had won a championship. So, Coach, talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. I'm going to preface this by saying I agree and disagree with you. We need coaching experiences in order to share with others what they're going through. In the same instance, coaching is teaching and working with people. And if you have those skills, the ability to coach any sport is possible. And what I mean by that is, Brandon, you're basketball, right? Yeah. So
Right.
if you're a basketball coach, what are the odds that you can coach soccer? And the answer is going to be very high. Because ultimately, unless you're teaching kids how to kick a ball, the technique of kicking a ball, or something like that, the athletes are athletes. They want to win. They probably know more about the sport than many coaches, because they live and breathe it every day, just like the coach does. And they also see what's going on the field or on the court. They see things that you may not see. Therefore, if I'm a basketball coach, could I coach a soccer team? The answer is absolutely yes. Are there differences? Of course. But my goal is to work with people and to inspire and motivate and train people. And if I can do that, it doesn't matter what the venue is, what the discipline is, it's possible to do that. I grew up playing all kinds of sports. I was one of those guys who didn't specialize in anything. I always made the team. I was always maybe the glue in the team, but nobody ever talked about my game because I wasn't that good. I was okay. I made the team. They needed me. I filled the roles. But it also allowed me to play a variety of sports and cross a lot of divides. As an example, in college, I played tennis, soccer. I threw the javelin. I threw the shot put. I did kickboxing. There's something else. Oh, volleyball. I played for the volleyball team as well. And so, yeah, all those experiences lend itself to somebody who's a coach educator, because you understand sports. You've been in a lot of sports. that we live in a society now where coaches are expected to be specialists, not only within a sport, but an area within that sport. And I think there's a danger in doing that because we become very siloed as to what we actually know and how we can actually adapt our coaching in order to do that. So there's some maybe thought that needs to go into, oh, what are you? Oh, I'm a specialist in this. Okay, but how does all this fit in with what you're doing? What are you talking about? We don't worry about that. Well, why not? Who's to say that that isn't valuable? And I'll give you an example. We had a student in our program. He's heavily involved in soccer administration in the U.S. and contacted me and said, I want to do your master's degree. Awesome. Great to have you. But I know the faculty at one of the other institutions where they have a master's in coaching soccer. Why don't you do that master's instead? Because that's built for you. And he said, I was listening to one of your podcasts and it was a basketball coach. And the basketball coach started talking about something that I immediately understood because it was happening in soccer. And he said, I realized that I needed to start learning from people outside of my sport to understand how to better my sport. And I found that very insightful. And I think we as coaches have a challenge to that where, I talk about this in presentations I give. Am I going to hire somebody who maybe doesn't have the natural resume that one would expect and take a risk on them? Or am I going to hire Coach Brandon, who's done this in basketball, this in basketball, this in basketball, and this in basketball, versus somebody who's maybe coached soccer and tennis and football, and then most recently basketball? I'm looking at the person who's taught those four sports because they've seen different ways to train. They've seen different ways to coach. They've worked in different environments. They've dealt with different kinds of parents, different sizes of teams. And all of a sudden they bring a wealth of information that this person who's just coached basketball may have a limited scope, a limited understanding of the sport or of coaching. I digressed a little bit, but I really feel this is an important component that we're missing in sports. I'm talking about this actually in next month at the Florida, I'm going to get it wrong, it's FIAAA, basically the Athletic Directors Conference for Florida next month on we are becoming too specialized as coaches and as athletic directors. We are not looking outside the box and getting creative. We are looking inward too much, and therefore everybody's doing the same thing who's doing the same thing. There's so many examples of coaches who came from crazy backgrounds where when I was at Oklahoma State, we had a cross country team that was ranked every year in the top 25. Very successful team. The head coach was a geneticist. He had a PhD in genetics. That doesn't make any sense. If I'm an athletic director, why would I hire a geneticist? I don't know, but his whatever training he did somehow contributed to his ability to be successful. And so we have students apply to our program. Hey, Dr. Baghurst, my degree is in journalism. That's not related to coaching. Is that going to be okay? Fantastic. I can't wait to read your papers. They're going to be amazing. The emails that you send to parents are going to be perfect. Of course I want you. We've got a student right now who is a cross-country coach in a high school, a junior high school, and her artwork is on display at FSU in a competition because her undergrad is in fine art. You go, fine art? That doesn't make sense for coaching. I don't know. Maybe it taught her patience. Maybe it taught her serenity and staying calm. Who knows? The point is that we as coaches, coach educators, athletic directors, we need to start looking a little bit outside the box because sometimes that's where we find the good stuff. Brandon, I don't shout this from the rooftops. I have 5 degrees, None of them are in coaching. And yet here I am. What am I? I run a center for coaching education, the only one of its kind in the country. And I've never been trained formally in universities as a coach. Now, when I went through, they didn't exist. The masters we have didn't exist. That's partly why we're creating it, or we did create it. But those degrees in sports psych, in sports administration, in teacher education have molded me into offering a perspective that somebody who went through and did an undergrad, a master's, and a PhD in coaching may never have. And I think we got to look at that perspective as coaches too. Thinking outside the box, hiring people outside the box, allowing ideas that are not expected or normal in our sport.
Doc, I like that you agreed and disagreed, because that's really helping me. And I'm thankful for it. Thank God that you said that, because I'm now helping out with volleyball. I'm assistant volleyball coach now. I have no clue of what I'm doing with volleyball. I have a great head coach and Coach Osborne. And she tells me all the time, like, you can do these things. And I feel like I haven't played the game, haven't been around it a lot. But you saying that is really gave me a boost of confidence now, because now I can learn some things, but also apply some things, but also have this big toolbox to be able to apply it in different aspects of the game and use it and can kind of make it merge together. And I can take what I'm learning in volleyball and make a transition to basketball and vice versa. And I've coached cross country before and bowling and things of that nature. So I'm glad that you said that, because I felt like you said, I felt like I had to be a specialist at this. Like I felt like I had to do this. But what you're saying, that you made a lot of sense. Like kids or the athletes, they're usually the ones who really putting a lot of work in. They doing the things that you talked about. And so it's more like a partnership. And so I'm thankful that you said that. And I like the direction where you're going. And my brother and I, Justin, we talk about it all the time. It would have been good to take a course where it focused on coaching, because when I was in school and went to Jackson State, it was about majoring in physical education, learning the educational part. But I felt like the things that you all offer at Florida State, I think those are major, because they talk about things that are not discussed, which sometimes becomes the major factor in the success of a coach. It is not based on wins and losses. It's about the lives that you change and the things that you, or the wisdom that you're implementing into student athletes. And I think that's why I've really drawn to what you talk about in your book and in your teachings and in what you all have created at Florida State. And it's major, because you see a lot of young coaches making a lot of mistakes, because like myself, you think when I first got into coaching, Doc, I really thought coaching was just putting on a suit, looking nice on the sideline, and just yelling a lot of stuff at X's and O's. But I'm realizing that it's more than that, and that's what led me to start this podcast, because coaching is so much more. And I wanted to give coaches, players, athletes, just the average fan, an insight into what we do as coaches. And you being here, really, to me, I feel like it propels that forward, because you're looking at coaching from a whole different viewpoint, which needs to be said and heard and often repeated. So I really like that, coach. And I mean, and I like that you are opening up all of our minds as coaches to what does this look like. And just reading through your book, I know you're big on relationships and you're big on listening and learning. Those things are so key with that. So, Coach, with that being said,
Hold
what
on.
is the
Before you
go ahead, go ahead,
ask me another question,
go ahead.
let me say three things. One, I
Okay,
haven't seen your application yet in our program.
that's true. Okay, let me add it to my list now.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, there are about 12 states in the South that have I can't remember the name, the actual term, but it's reciprocity. That if the degree does not exist in your state, you can apply for in-state tuition. So
I didn't know that.
you
All
in
right.
Mississippi, I can almost guarantee would pay in-state tuition for our master's degree, because I know the student I mentioned earlier, he was in Alabama. Alabama does not have a master's degree in coaching. A lot of states don't. And so he paid in-state tuition for his master's. So that's that. Second thing, the volleyball players that you work with, how old are they?
They range from the age of 14 to about 18 years old.
Okay. So my recommendation to them for you is you go in and you tell those players what you don't know. Because if you go in and you put on a show that you know what you're doing, they're going to find out real quickly that you're full of holes. And I say that in a nice way. Instead, hey, look, I'm new to this sport. I coach basketball over here and I'm here to help out. So I want you all to help me, show me what you do and why you do it and how I can help you do it better. Because what you've done is empowered them to say, I trust you to help me and I am human. And I'm not gonna fill up your minds with nonsense and act like I know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna be straight with you, honest with you, and I hope you'll be honest back with me so that I can learn from you. Third thing, you come from another sport, which means that you can apply things from basketball into volleyball. For example, hey coach, we do this warm up in basketball, which is a lot of fun. Can I try it? Can I try it tomorrow? Instead of doing this warm up, can I just share it with the players and do something different? And you've introduced something you've done in basketball into volleyball. What has it changed? Nothing other than we're doing something different. That sounds like fun. As opposed to we do this over and over and over again, right? Because you learned it in basketball. Hey, in basketball, we set up something like this. I wonder if it could work like this in volleyball. And now you've created something in volleyball that maybe no other team that you play has ever seen before because of your experience in basketball. So those were the three things I just kind of wanted to mention before you moved on to another question.
I'm glad you did that, Coach. I like the way you think. That's major, Coach. I'm speechless. That helps me out a lot because I felt that, Coach, and you know it. I'm like,
I bet you're never speechless. I bet you're never speechless.
Coach, when we on that volleyball court, Coach, I'm so like, man, I'm thinking so many things because I know that they know that I don't know it as much because like sports, you got to know the terminology, you got to know the ins and outs, and so I'm sitting there thinking I need to express that, but in my mind, I'm like, if I say that, do I lose the discipline? Do I lose the respect? But you hit me with a keyword, and that's what our generation loves is empowerment. So you helping me out a lot. If nobody else listening, Doc, you helping me out a lot. And like I said, you got me speechless because everything you saying is like you almost reading through me because these are the same things that I'm questioning myself in a new sport. But if I'm feeling that way, I feel like there's some coaches who are in their quote unquote primary sport who's probably feeling the exact same way because there's not a lot of direction. Because a lot of times winning is in front of it, but there's a lot of things that goes before winning. And just writing these things down, the part I love that you said was the honesty part. Because even though you are admitting something that seems to be a flaw, it actually is the strength. So I love it, Doc. I really do. So, well, I'm gonna skip down to a question because this is a question I had, but now I think it fits perfectly. Coach, I keep saying Doc, Coach, because I know you fill both roles. So when I was doing my research, I looked and I observed that you all were number one in program in Florida, in a particular area that you have, and then I looked at number 6 in the graduation education program. Now, Doc, how did you come together with your team and make you all number one in the state of Florida and within the top 10 in the United States? Because I know that had to take a lot of planning, a lot of sacrifice that most people probably don't know because to be number one and to stay number one, that's major because that target becomes larger on your back. So, Coach, talk to us about just the program, just in and of itself, and what makes it unique. And in that, I'm gonna ask you. I got about 3 questions for you as well. What makes it unique? Talk to us about your staff that you work with, and what makes Florida State special, because to be number one means a lot, especially when people, well, I would say athletes, or on the athletic side, we think about Florida State football, maybe basketball, obviously baseball does good. All the sports in the Florida region, they actually do well. So how do you, as a competitor, and I hate to use competitor in this term, but keep it number one, talk about your staff and what makes Florida State the great school that we all know it to be?
Yeah, so let me clarify the number one. We are the number one graduate college. Our college is number one in Florida for rankings. And I don't determine the rankings. I don't handle the metrics. What that means is just we are considered the best. Our college is considered the number one college for what we do. So it's not just my program. It's all of the programs in our college. And we are ranked sixth nationwide in all public institutions. So any private institutions aren't included in that.
Thank you for that.
That's not just me. That is everybody in our college working really hard to provide quality education, to support students, to graduate students, etc., to do research grants and all of that. So let me just clarify this. Listen, Brandon, I'm competitive, okay? I like winning. And I would love our program to be number one in the country. We don't have metrics for it. So I think we are. I just can't prove it. And I will do everything in my power to continue to build our program so that it is the place everybody wants to come and study. I want it to be, wait, you went to FSU COACH? Wow. As opposed to, you went where? So that hopefully answers that question. We do, our staff is made up of faculty who either work in the field now. We hire adjuncts to support us when necessary. Example, we have an athletic director who's also a strength and conditioning coach at university. He teaches sometimes our human performance class. We have somebody probably this summer will be teaching our motor learning class, and he works for one of the NBA teams in motor development. So we bring in people who are experts in their area to support us. But the two main faculty in our program that run most of it are myself and Dr. Megan Bunning. She was she's a Hall of Fame athlete from the University of South Carolina. She played collegiately and internationally softball, and then coached in the ACC and SEC. And now she does. She's an analyst for the ACC network and a mental performance coach. So she works in kind of the sports psychology area as well with clients. So you already know about me. That's her. And then we have adjuncts to support that. Our program is really unique. It genuinely is. And the reason is this. When I came to FSU, I came to start this program. The center, yes, but also this program. And what we got to do with this program is build it from scratch. And here's, what was your degree in? What was your undergrad in?
Health education.
Health education. Okay, perfect example. So if somebody came to me and said, Tim, build a program in health education, I'd be like, sure. And they'd say, but you can't spend any money, right? Because we don't have any money to invest in it. You can't spend any money, but you got to build this health education. So I'd be like, okay, cool. So I'd go over to health sciences and I'd say, hey, can we have a couple of health science classes? I'd go over to maybe psychology and we take a couple of psychology classes. I'd go over to maybe, nutrition, and we take a couple of those classes, and we pool all these classes together, and then we go, hey, we got a health education degree. Yeah, a few education classes in there as well. The problem is, if you're a health education, you became a health education teacher, right? That was your training.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So if you became a health education teacher, you may have been taught by faculty who know nothing about teaching health because they're a nutritionist. or they're a psychologist or whatever. So when I came to FSU, the dean of our college was very forward thinking and willing to take a chance. We built our program from zero. We said, what do coaches need to know? We went and asked our advisory board. We went and asked other coaches. We went and looked at all the other academic programs in the country. And we said, what do coaches need to know? We have 10 classes. Let's make sure those 10 classes are important. And we built 10 classes that are taught by us. They're not farmed out to some other program who doesn't know anything about coaching. Everybody who teaches in our program is a coach or a former coach. So they get it. So that's one reason. Second reason, a lot of programs, when you come into the program, you have to take a set number of classes per semester. You take this and this in the fall, this and this in the spring, this and this in the summer. Well, when you're in basketball season, I'm guessing that things are a little bit hectic, right?
You know it.
Understatement?
Yes.
What if you wanted to take less classes during in season? Too bad. You're taking these 6 hours. Suck it up and get through it. No, you don't know what it's like to be a coach. So what we did is we created a degree where you get to choose what classes you take when, so that you can build your degree around your schedule, because we know coaches' schedules are insane. And so we have some coaches who say, you know what? Football season in the fall, I'm not even taking a class. I'll start again in the spring. Or we have some who are graduate assistants. I just need to plow through this. I'm going to take 3 classes a semester and get this thing done. Okay. So we allow that option. A third thing, we allow students to enroll in fall, summer, or spring, recognizing that sports are seasonal and you may not want to start. You may not want to start your program in September when football season's about to kick off. You may want to start in December. Fine, you can start in December. We also made sure that our program is completely online. And by completely online, sometimes I get emails and it says your program is 100% online. Is it completely online? Yeah. Yeah, it's 100% means it's completely online. You never have to come to Tallahassee if you don't want to. Now, we love meeting people in person. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to Santa Fe or New Mexico next week, and I get to meet one of our students who's actually a student out in Albuquerque. So I'm excited about that. But you don't have to come. It's 100% online. Last thing I would add is we got rid of tests. I'm not a huge fan of testing. I don't see that it's particularly valuable. Your ability to memorize things over a short period of time and regurgitate them onto a piece of paper or a Word document doesn't really tell me if you've learned. I'm more interested in show me that you've learned. Explain, discuss, analyze, debate. Those are more important to me than give me facts, give me right answers. Because we know in coaching, a lot of it is not a right answer. It's an opinion. And therefore, I want your opinion backed up by the support of other people. So if you think this is the right theory or the right way to do it, great. Now show me why. As opposed to, oh, well, this is the right answer and I got it on a piece of paper, therefore I get an A. And then next month, what was that again? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. I got a grade. Well, then why are you in our program? Because you're not really learning. So we got rid of testing, which I think is I never liked tests. And I don't know I know very few people who enjoy test taking. So we wanted to make this as feasible, realistic, achievable, and beneficial to coaches as possible. And that's what makes us unique to my knowledge, any other program in the country.
Doc, I love that you're making it simple for those who want to do it, but there is a challenge with it. And I really enjoy like for me personally, I like performance-based tests if I had to take a test, but I like to be able to apply what I've learned because you said it correctly. Throughout my years in school, master's degree, bachelor's and specialist degree, it was all about just at that moment in time, just studying for that moment. The things that stuck to me, it did. But you said it, and you've been doing it a long time. It's really about that grade and trying to move on to the next task at hand, especially when you're in season, because you are absolutely right. Some classes when I first started in the middle of battling basketball season and class. So it does get very clouded during that time. So I really enjoyed that. Doc, will you ever think about or have you ever thought about maybe creating an undergrad program for this? Because I know there's high level thinking when we're in our master's program, but what about undergrad? Because coach, I really like I did fine in school, thank God. But this, what you're saying and what you're speaking in this avenue that you're creating for coaches, I really think that fosters a greater appreciation for this game of coaching. So, what you thinking about undergrad? I know that's that maybe far fetched. Maybe you've been thinking about it, but what do you think about it?
Let me ask you a follow-up question, a simple one. If you were to create an undergraduate program, would you create a minor in coaching? Would you create a undergraduate certificate in coaching? A minor is usually 18 to 22 hours, certificates typically about 12 to 15 hours. Or would you create a major in coaching?
Uh, that's a good question. Obviously, I'm thinking I probably would say a major only for the simple fact I love my health classes and they were great. But there are some things that when I first got into coaching as coming out of undergrad that I wish I would have known. But with you asking me that question, I'm really hesitant about where you going with it. But that would probably be my initial thought that if I could do, I guess, more on job training in my undergrad, because most of your on job training, or most of your on job training in your undergrad in the education is really in the classroom. Like I got probably minimal to none. Mm, maybe not. Well, I did. I didn't get any of the official training and coaching. I went out and volunteered personally at the Parks and Recreation in the city where I lived at that time, Jackson. But I didn't receive any formal guidance into coaching as well. So that's probably what I would say. But I feel like you're going another direction. Let me hear what you got.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm just simply curious. When I
Mm.
was at Oklahoma State, we built a minor in coaching and then built it out into a major in coaching at the undergraduate level. So we had people were getting a degree in coaching. The reason I'm asked is because that is one of the topics we've talked about recently in terms of we have this graduate program. It is successful. We have healthy numbers enrolled. We have students from all over the country. Last night we had orientation. We had a student from Indonesia coming into orientation, which is fantastic. So we have students from all over the world. Now, do we look at the undergraduate level? And if we look at the undergraduate level, do we make this a complete degree or do we make it a subset? Or these are questions that we're discussing right now. So I was just curious in your opinion. The answer to your question is yes, undergraduate. Listen, if there'd have been a degree in coaching as an undergraduate, I would have probably been and signed up for it. And I think if you look at the athletic population that we have in universities, I think a lot of athletes would probably sign up for it. And it seems quite harsh, maybe harsh isn't the right term, unfair, that a student who wants to be a coach has to go to college and study something that isn't coaching before they're allowed to be a coach. So discussions ongoing. We'll see. Come back to me in a year's time. I may have a better answer for you, but I think there is definitely a need, and there are programs out there that are certainly pursuing that now.
The reason that I think it's important too, Doc, with this being year 16 for me, I see a lot of young coaches entering into this game or enter into this career or this servanthood of coaching. And I see so many mistakes that I made and I see them maybe following that same path. So I'm trying to catch a lot of young coaches, even through this podcast, about some things that you can avoid because we just were not taught that. And you said it perfectly. A lot of times we are focused like we have a math major or English major or social studies major. We rarely have an opportunity to practice what we our craft. And then when we get into the work, I guess in the work field, workforce, however you want to say it, you may struggle, or there may be a large learning curve that sometimes you may not get an opportunity to be able to come back from those mistakes or get an opportunity because you're just not simply prepared for those moments. And I think that really hit me early in my career. And I spoke about this previously on a lot of podcasts, is that when I had an opportunity to coach at one of our largest schools here in the city of Jackson, I was not selected for the job because of, and I can say XYZ, but there's a lot of things that went into it, from maybe my age, maybe the experience, from what they told me, which when I look back at it, that's not necessarily true, especially just kind of looking at some of the things that you have said. But if I would have, and everybody says that, if I would have known some of the things that I know now prior going into that interview, I could have done some things differently, prepared myself differently, and maybe when they told me I was a little too young, or when I found out that the politics get involved, maybe that punch in the stomach wouldn't have took the life out of me, and maybe I could have maybe got out of that. And I'm not gonna say I was down or depressed about it, but I was in a dark place because I wanted to be the head coach at my high school that I attended. I went there. I went through the struggles with them. I was there. I did a good job, and I felt like this should have probably been my job. But that's me, of a young guy, thinking this should be mine. And as I got older and I see this is just not like pick up basketball, I pick you because you here or you deserve it. The administrators, they have a decision to make and say, is this the person that we feel that can lead us in the right direction? Yeah, you may be a quality young man. Maybe you may be this, and this, but I've been around the block a little bit, and I feel like this candidate may be a little bit better for you. And I hear so many young coaches get discouraged because of that. And I even had one of my employees right now, he didn't get a position as a principal job. And we're the same age, and I'm helping him work through it because he said, oh man, I should have had it. I did this, and this. But I said, did you do this? Did you do this? So even at his age, and I'm 37, obviously he's 37 as well, he had to learn that. And I learned it at 24. So I get it, Doc. Like it's something that's needed. It really is.
Let me say 3 quick things here based on what you said. Number one, for people that want to improve, there's no excuses.
That's true.
If you want to get better, there are so many resources out there to help you get better. This podcast is one of them. My podcast is one of them. I mentioned this before the show. We're running a clinic in Orlando on June 15th, a one-day clinic. It's $25. We're not trying to make money. We're losing money by running this clinic. It is for the community. It is for coaches. What's your excuse? If you want to get better, there's no excuse. Now, the vast majority of coaches don't actually care about getting better too much. If they're made to do it, or if they're incentivized to do it, maybe they will. Otherwise, don't you know my record? I'm fine. Don't you know how long I've been coaching? I mean, these are all things that I hear over and over and over again. And we've already talked about coaching changes, our knowledge changes, who we work with changes. We have to follow that and adapt to it. I have 5 degrees, so I should be able to put up my feet, right? Because I know everything. Seriously, Brandon, the older I get, the more I realize how ignorant I really am and how little I actually know about the field of coaching.
Me too.
And I'm enrolled in a graduate certificate here at FSU. I don't have to be. It's not going to give me a raise. It's not going to get me a new job. It's because I have an opportunity to learn new things from people who can teach me things I don't know anything about. So you've got no excuse. There's just so many resources out there that are free or low cost. Number two, politics are real in sports. Okay. That means networking is vital in sports, and not enough people do it or do it well. And I'll say that I was one of those people. I didn't know how to meet people and network with people and build contacts. Nobody taught me that. And so for years and years, I didn't do that and understand the value of that. Last night, we had a student who enrolled in our program, and he enrolled in our program because I was on somebody's podcast. And he said, I heard you on that podcast. And I said, I want to be part of that program. That's cool. That's me reaching out, developing networks, right? Because how do I get on that podcast? If you didn't find me on Twitter or Elon or Musk or whatever you want to call it now, we'll call it X. If you hadn't found me, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be networking. Well, how did you find me? I had to put myself out there. I had to make myself known. I don't like social media. I don't like posting all the time. I find it very time consuming and hard work, but it's part of my job. So I do it. So there is politics in this. A career coach who I interviewed recently said 70% of jobs are hired before they're posted, because we know who we want. It's not always the case, right? When I hired Dr. Bunning, she was not on my list. I didn't have a list of I want these people. It was a free-for-all open application. But a lot of jobs aren't like that anymore. And then I'm also going to say, while networking comes with who you know and gives you opportunities, it's not just who you know, it's also what you know. And I've had people come into my class and say, oh, it's not what you know, it's who you know. No, that's not true. Who you know gets you the opportunity. What you know gets you the job. So I came to FSU, and the requirements for me to have an interview here were significant, right? I have to be very well qualified to have the role that I have. But I wasn't the only candidate. Knowing some of the people in the department in the college was an advantage for me because of the connections I'd made with them maybe previously. But when I get here, that doesn't matter if I don't have the credentials and the knowledge and the experience to be successful in my job, because they'll find out real fast if I'm just full of it, and I'll be out the door real quick too. So who you know, the way I say it is who you know gets you the interview, what you know gets you the job.
I'm writing that down. Who you know and what you know. And that's what I told myself, the younger Brandon, is that at that time, I probably couldn't do both of those. I knew about coaching, but I don't know if I knew enough to be a head coach and run a program. And networking was nothing close to what I was trying to do at that age. And my mom had always told me that, but I always told my mom, small talk, I hate small talk. And as I say that now, I'm like, man, that's not even something I need to say in my profession, because that's a part of it. Not everything, but it's a part of it. And you are right. Doc. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say in this, understand that networking is a skill.
Yes, it is.
It's not just small talk. It is a skill that is learned. And we don't just naturally network with people. Some people do, right? Those extroverts that make everyone else be uncomfortable because they're out there and talking, and you're just like, that's not me. I want to sit in the corner. I'm the introvert. I don't like speaking in public. I don't like being front and center in front of people. I would quite happily sit in the back, anything. But that's not what my job is. So I have had to train myself to be less uncomfortable, because I'm always uncomfortable, less uncomfortable in front of people doing things like this. It is a skill that can be trained. So if somebody's like, well, I'm not a people person, or I just get nervous around others, or It's if I ask them, it's going to be awkward because they're really important and I'm not. Yeah, those things can be overcome because I did, and it is learned over time to have those things. So I don't want to spend 30 minutes discussing how to be a better networker, but understand that if you're not great at networking, that doesn't mean you can't be, because you can be. It is a learned skill.
No, Doc, man, take all your time because that is important. I like that because, to be honest, Doc, I guess as you say, X, Twitter, whatever they call it now, I try to do that. And you said I'm uncomfortable with it. I don't know if they're going to say yes or no. So, as the kids say, you take your shot. When I reached out to you, I was surprised that I said, maybe he think I'm somebody else. Like, I was surprised that you even responded back. And that's so appreciative. I was very appreciative of it. I was like, man, let me check my profile. Does it have him somebody else? So you do have to do those things. And again, I said it earlier, I just appreciate you for doing that, but I'm glad that I did it. And I'm learning so much information, and you probably gonna charge me because I feel like I'm in class with you because there's so much here that really making me think about it, and it's really helping me because I've always thought about these things, but I never, and this may sound crazy, I never thought that these were true. Like this is what you had to do to move into this route of success. Doc, I'm got a few more minutes, but I do want to ask these questions. I'm kind of get to some things outside of what we've been talking about, and I really want to hear your perspective on this, and I'll share mine as well. I know that you're a University of Arkansas guy. Obviously, Coach Calipari is leaving. Well, he has left Kentucky, and he's at Arkansas. Now, I always look at the story behind the story. When they lost to Oakland, I felt like, and I probably could be wrong, I felt like the social media pushed the narrative that Coach Calipari is the worst coach ever. This, and this, and this. And as I'm listening to them say this, I'm thinking in my mind like, yeah, he hasn't had the success recently, but it's bigger than what they're saying. Well, Kentucky's not this anymore. He's not this. He's not this. He's not this. Doc, I like the way you think. So I want to just hear your perspective on from the loss of Oakland to the transition to Arkansas, because personally, I feel like, and I don't know Coach Calipari, I feel like that maybe his feelings were hurt, maybe, could be wrong. Maybe he saw that it is time for a new voice, or maybe he said, I need to go somewhere else so I can continue to be myself. But personally, I just felt like the media pushed a narrative that may have pushed Big Blue Nation to say, let's get rid of Cal. Or maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to hear your perspective on it because I love the way you see the picture, but you're thinking bigger than what's presented.
We don't know the story. We don't know the narrative. All we can do is speculate on the words that are written and said by people who also don't know the narrative. And there is a major difference between those of us who work in smaller sports, i.e. me, I tend to work in smaller sports, who may not understand the ins and outs of what's going on. For example, I've worked in racquetball for many years at many different levels. I was head coach of the junior national team. Things happened in the junior national team that many people would speculate about, but none of them knew except for maybe 3 people in the team. They don't know. All they can do is speculate. All they can do is create stories around what might or might not have happened, because what actually happened, nobody knows about. And so it's important to filter these stories, these conversations that happen through the lens of we don't actually know. And so we're guessing. Because you have an opinion about it. I have an opinion about it. And I mean, why did Musselman leave? Why did he leave Arkansas and go to USC? Was it because he wanted to go home? Did he get a fatter contract? Did he worry about The fact that his class was, I mean, his record this past season was pretty poor, and maybe it was going to be poor again in another year. We don't know. Maybe it was a combination of all those. Maybe it was something completely different. His kid was sick and needed hospital care in California. We have no idea. So we have to be careful making conclusions. And I'm not trying to sit on the fence here, Brandon, because if you truly want my opinion, I think Calipari was tired at Kentucky. He was tired of doing the same thing beyond where the years that he said he would be there, because he said 10 years is about the length of a career of a college coach in one place. And here he was 12, 13 years in. So I don't know about you, but I've worked at a place where I loved my job, but one day it was like, this isn't fun for me anymore. I'm not enjoying it like I used to. And I need something to invigorate me, to excite me, to get me going again. That's one of the reasons I came to FSU. New challenge, new opportunities, new everything. And it really excited me and got me going again. So I think there's that in there. I also would add that over the last couple of years, and I'm going to be careful how I say this because I don't want to convey or betray confidences, but over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to work with some professional teams. On outside of FSU, I do work with coaches in particular in terms of providing them with mentorship and development. And I've been able to work with some high level teams, and I've seen the inside of what goes on and how the narrative is often completely different to what is actually going on. And while journalists speculate and etc., they have no idea. They have no idea. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do, right? Somebody you squeals or let something drop. But a lot of times it's, no, that's not what happened. So we just need to be careful because, as a coach, if some parent came out and went to some newspaper and started throwing some stuff about you, how would you feel about that? And it may be completely untrue, but people believe it because it was in a newspaper and people are talking about it and it's on social media. And now all of a sudden, Brandon is this terrible coach. And the reality is that maybe that kid, maybe that athlete, or maybe that parent, or maybe that assistant coach, whatever, completely misunderstood you, maybe completely misheard you. Nobody knows the narrative except you and the people that it was involved with. So I don't know is the answer. I don't know. I'm actually, as an Arkansas fan, I'm kind of like Calipari in Arkansas. That's weird. That's really weird because he's been a rival for so many years. But at the same time, I'm kind of happy for him. I don't know if you've watched any of his autobiography or anything like that. He's a really interesting guy, and I'm excited for him. I think he was just kind of tired at Kentucky of just the pressure and the heat and the you'd better. Oh, look, you didn't. Now he gets a clean slate in front of a group of fans that I think will really embrace him and love basketball. So I'm excited to see how he does.
I like that perspective, and I'm excited too. And he seems to be a very class act. I watched the departure video that he did for those back in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited for it, and I like what you said. I'm really liking everything you're saying, Doc. But that's what I love about the podcast as well, because you are absolutely right. Fans hear one thing, or fans come to the game and watch us for X amount of hours, and that's the narrative, and that's far from the truth. And of course, in this role, that's what we have to deal with, is the negative criticism sometimes and those pressures. But it's good to be able to have a platform, not to make excuses or say why me, but to say, these are some things that we go through. And you're absolutely right. usually what you see in front of you, there's so many things happening behind the scenes that influences the culture of whatever sports you're playing or decision that are made. So I like that you said that. I'm gonna ask you two more questions, Doc, and then I'm gonna let you go. Steve Kerr, I thought when you were talking, I thought about Steve Kerr. I thought about just your philosophy. I thought about just, your growing, your growth throughout your career. And I think about the organization of Golden State, and I think about the Draymond Green situation. And what you said really hit me when you was talking is that everybody's painting the narrative about who's to blame for this, who's to blame for this. But when I think about some of the things that you mentioned in your book and some of the things you talk about in general in your class, you really talk about relationships and really, knowing the players and knowing the situation. Drop a little wisdom in that situation. Now, again, this podcast, and I like it, we're not here to talk or break, but I just want to hear your perspective about that, because you always, and I said this last time, but I love it, you're always thinking differently. So kind of what's your perspective when you look at it as a whole? Because you and I know, and probably most people know it and may look at it differently. There's probably some things that are going on, or some things that have been said, or conversations that have been said. So I just like to hear your perspective on, just Golden State, the culture of Golden State, and just what you see from the outside looking in as a professor, coach, author.
Kerr has been pretty clear about what his core values and philosophy are, and those core values and philosophy have been very successful in developing people, and through the development of people, success. And I truly believe that if you develop the people, if you have a relationship with your athletes that is a positive one, that is nurturing and caring, they will train harder, work harder, compete harder for you and each other and the team they represent than if you do not have that. And that breeds, look at any team that is winning. You don't see the players hating each other. You see them bonding together, fighting for each other, committing to each other, committing to their coach. They generate success. So Kerr has done that very successfully. The Draymond Green one is really interesting, and I don't know that I have an answer other than I would love to ask that question of Kerr myself, because I go back to thinking about players like Dennis Rodman, who was permitted to behave in a way that was completely against what everyone else was permitted to behave. He got away with things that other players didn't. And from a coaching perspective, do you permit that? Do you allow your star players to do things that you don't allow your bench players to do? And at the moment, it feels like that, right? Draymond Green is getting playtime and is abusing officials and hitting people and acting in a way that would be very anti-core values of Steve Kerr. Now let's back up and say we don't know everything. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? That athlete that is having a bad day and blowing up at you, and you're like, man, you're way out of line. There are consequences for this. You don't know the fact that maybe their parents are getting divorced, or there's a death in the family, or we don't know. We assume that everybody is behaving the way we are feeling, or we're behaving when we interact with them. And the truth is, we don't know. And so, again, without sitting on a fence, we don't know the story, and I would love to know the story. I'd love to know, why is this being allowed? He's serving his time, the NBA's suspension, whatever it is, and then he's straight back in the squad. We don't know the conversations that he's had. We don't know maybe the mental issues that he's going through, where further discipline may cause greater harm to somebody. We don't know. So it is an odd one. It's one that I don't understand, but we know that there's other stuff going on. There has to be. because the rest of us are scratching our heads going, well, that doesn't make sense that a coach allows this and is kind of okay with this, and then they're straight back in the team. Clearly, there's stuff going on that we don't have the answers to, but I'm as curious as you are.
I think it's a great response. And I agree. Steve Kerr has those core values that he really lives by. And it's evident from when he first started, even when you go back to his days when he was at Phoenix, when he was in the office. I think he was general manager. I could be wrong. But when he was there, it was the same thing. And so again, it's no shade at Steve Kerr or Draymond Green. It's just conversations and thinking about those things because Coach Kerr, he's dealing with some of the same things that we deal with on a major level in the front of a lot of people. And so it's a lot different. And we have those small scenarios in our own locker rooms, and we have to look at ourselves as coaches. How do we handle it? And I love the way you put that, Doc, is that we never know what the situation is. And sometimes I've had to communicate this to my parents. Everything that we do as coaches may not maybe look as right to you, but each situation for each kid scenario is a little bit differently, and there's gonna be some give or take that you may agree or disagree. You may agree with it or disagree with it, but it's some things that has to be done. But like you said, you got to be able to set that precedent of what's going to be allowed and what's not going to be allowed. So
Yeah,
again,
you have to have standards. There's
mhm,
no question. There have to be discipline has to be enforced. This is not a case. I definitely don't recommend. Oh, you got a Dennis Rodman on your team. I just let them do whatever they want because they're talented. That's not what I'm saying at all. We just we from the outside looking in have to be careful how we judge the situation and judge others because we truly don't understand it.
I like it, Doc. We got to be slow to judge individuals. Doc, again, our time is running short, but I definitely want to say thank you. But before I let you go, Doc, I have this that I call it the last shot. But pretty much what that is, Doc, you just kind of close the show. You can close it with saying anything that you like, maybe mention someone, give someone a shout out, maybe leave us with a closing thought. I know that you want to talk, maybe you can mention again as a part of that, the clinic that you have on June the 15th, so people can catch that as well. But anything that you would like to share, Doc, Doc, go ahead and take the last shot.
Yeah, well, hopefully I don't airball this. We'll see. Um, just a reminder, June 15th, you can go to our website. You can look for FSU Coach on the Florida State University um, website, or you can find me everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to provide the link. But June 15th, we have a 1-day clinic, $25. We give you some lunch, we give you some FSU swag, and come learn. Come network with coaches from all over the place, all different sports. I'm excited about this one. It's the second year we've done it. We had it in Tallahassee last year, so we're going to try to move it around for each year just to try to reach different people. I would say just in closing, Brandon, when we look at the coaching profession as a whole, it's we're in a position where coaches are revered in society, but are not necessarily deserving of that. And I say that in the sense that many coaches are undertrained or not trained. Many coaches harm children and young adults and professionals. Many coaches are poorly paid. Many coaches are unmotivated or demotivated to improve themselves. And we find ourselves in this cycle of looking for good coaches, taking advantage of those good coaches, burning those coaches out, and then starting that cycle again, and hopefully not picking up a bad coach. Unfortunately, in the position I'm in, I hear a lot of horror stories of coaching. And much of this stems from a lack of training, a lack of awareness, a lack of understanding. And oftentimes it's not really the coach's fault because the coach doesn't know any better. It's Brandon, the parent, who's asked to step in and fill in for somebody who's moved on and doesn't really know too much about volleyball, and all of a sudden is responsible for a group of athletes in volleyball, and then one of them gets hurt because Brandon is running a drill that he thought was safe, but he didn't know any better. Or Brandon said something that one of the athletes found deeply offensive and caused harm. But Brandon never thought about saying it like that before, or the consequences of that, because he'd never been taught to consider that. So a lot of this comes down to the fact that these coaches are not out for ill will. They want to win, but they don't know how to win the right way. And that comes down to a lack of training, education, and knowledge. That's the responsibility of sports organizations. It's the responsibility of schools and school districts, of clubs, of professional teams, of governments, to be able to say, we need to have standards for coaches. We need to have expectations for them. If we're to revere the word coach in our society, it needs to deserve recognition and respect. So we need to start paying coaches seriously. We need to incentivize them to train and get trained. If I was talking about this today, I had a guest on my show this morning, Brandon, and if I go to a dentist and get dental work, that doesn't qualify me to be a dentist. But if I've gone and played basketball as a high school athlete or a college athlete, somehow that semi-qualifies me to be a coach. So why can't I go be a dentist, right? Can I work on you? I'm pretty good. My teeth are, look at my teeth, right? You get my point.
Perfect.
So, okay, dentist, that's a bit crazy. Let's go to athletic training. Oh, wait, they work with people. So they have to go through tons of certification and training and hours of internship. And they work with athletes. Okay, what about strength and conditioning? Oh, yeah. They have to go get their CSCS or whatever it is in order to be a strength and conditioning coach, because, you're working with weights and kids can get hurt. Okay, well, I'm going to be the head coach of the athletic trainer and strength and conditioning coach and the assistant coaches. Yeah, but guess what? I don't even have to be trained. And I'm overseeing all of it. So do you see the illogic of the society or the system that we've developed, which is,
I do.
Of all the people in sports, the people who need training the most, who need certifications the most, licensure the most, are coaches, and we don't demand it of them. Whose responsibility is that? All of us. Parents. Go ask, hey, Coach Sanders, where'd you get your training? Do you have a licensure? Do you do professional development each year so that you're better? You should. We expect it of you. Now, Coach Sanders is like, I wish I could, but that's going to cost me $500 and I only get a stipend of this much and I use that to pay my gas. That's a fair point. Let's go to the athletic director and talk about that. Let's go to the senators and say, hey, instead of the teachers' unions controlling the salaries or stipends of coaches, let's allow somebody else to control the stipends of coaches to incentivize them. So we're in this position where coaches in many instances are not supported well. As a consequence, they don't do the job that they probably could or should, and it's not always their fault. And we as a whole need to stand up and say, let's do something about this. And we're trying to at FSU. I've traveled around the state multiple times. I have meetings next month, which I hope help to start to address this, to say, no, let's have some standards. Now let's tie some standards with incentives, because we don't just expect coaches to stand up and go, oh yeah, I'll get trained. Let's incentivize it, but let's raise the level of our profession so that when we do say coach, people go, nice. I bet that was a lot of work. Because right now it's kind of like it could be or it couldn't be. Because a volunteer coach is the same as a professional international coach. They have the same designation in our society. The volunteer coach could be more qualified than the professional coach. We have students in our program who graduated. They're volunteer coaches. They have a master's in coaching. That's more than most people in this country. So that's my little shot. Appreciate you allowing me to have the platform to just share it, because it is important to me as a parent, as a coach. I want respect of our profession. I want my kids well coached. So thank you, and look forward to seeing your application. We'll see you in class in August.
Hey, Doc, you got me excited about it, man. I'm really going to have to look into it because you got some good information. I'm definitely want to look at that clinic as well. So I got to be able to reconnect with you, because you are elevating, and you and your team are elevating what I always envisioned a coach should be. And that's being the best at what we do, and not just on the sideline with a nice suit on or a nice shirt on or a nice skirt on, yelling things out and holding a clipboard. Is more to coaching than that. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you for giving your time. Fans of In the Sand podcast, please support Doc. Got a lot going on and a lot of good things that he can provide for you. And I'm just excited. Has a busy schedule. Please support. I always say support my coaches. Got to support Doc as well. So many ways, and I'll post some different things on how you can support and just show appreciation, because he doesn't have to do what he's doing, and he doesn't have to do it at the level that he's doing. And he said it in the beginning of the show, and that's one thing that I wrote down in the beginning. I'm glad I'm able to come back to it. His humble spirit, his giving spirit, and those are the individuals that you need. And I'm glad it came at perfect time. I was gonna say that in the beginning, but I'm glad that throughout this interview you saw that. And that's just another person here to bless the podcast. So, Doc, again, I appreciate you so much. Until next time, everybody, as I always say, be nice, be kind to someone, and we'll see you on the next episode.